Hello, everyone, and welcome to the first episode in a 4 episode series all about the latest generative AI for developers exam from AWS training and certification. We've got a great show in store for you today. My name is Trevor Spires. If we haven't met before, I'm a solutions architect at Amazon. We're going to become very good friends over the next 4 weeks. And lucky for you, it's not going to just be me for the next 4 weeks. You've got two other amazing Amazonians that are going to be taking us on your generative AI learning journey. Today, and in fact, is all going to be about kind of level setting of what you can expect for this exam if you decide to take the certification. And then we're going to jump right into some of the concepts that you'll need to know to be successful on this AWS exam. So, folks, I'll throw it over to my wonderful co-hosts to introduce themselves in a second. But before I do that, let us know where you are dialing in from. We have a global audience here, especially at AWS Training and Certification. So always love seeing where people are coming in from. I'm coming at you live from the greater Boston area. Go sports, Celtics, Patriots, and all of that. But let us know where you are coming in from in the world. And while they do that, Frank, for those who haven't had the pleasure of meeting you yet, why don't you let them know who you are and what you got in store for them today?
Hi, my name is Frank Spies. I'm joining from Düsseldorf, Germany, and I'm a senior technical trainer, joined AWS 2020, so almost 6 years ago. And I'm 12 times certified and also certified for this exam, so hopefully can contribute some good insights in passing this very soon for you.
Love to hear it. While you're introducing yourself, we got folks from the United Kingdom, Bolivia. We've got somebody, I think, from Chicago, maybe dialing in from the car. That sounds dangerous. Stay safe, Julian. We've also got Oksana, who, if I'm not mistaken, kind of has written the book on a lot of these AWS certifications. Oksana, introduce yourself, please.
You're way too kind. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm Oksana Hackley. I've been with AWS training and certification for about 4.5 years, creating different courses and contributing to learning initiatives that are designed to help you upskill in the areas of cloud computing and AI. And today I'm so excited to dive deeper with you into GenAI and help you guide you in your studies for the AI Developer Professional exam. And I'm joining from the Washington, D.C. metro area.
The DC metro area, and oh my gosh, the locations keep pouring in. We've got Istanbul. People are already fans of Oksana and Frank. So a really exciting show ahead of us today. And thanks everybody for joining. We're going to be sharing links throughout the episode, so make sure to check the chat if you want to kind of get a nice call to action of where to go next. But I guess the best place to start here might be with you, Oksana. We might want to just take a couple minutes, let people know kind of the extended agenda for today's episode, and then we can jump right into the infamous exam guide, everyone's favorite PDF.
Of course. So we will quickly review the exam structure, and then we will dive straight into domain 1, since it's the largest domain on the exam. And for today's episode, we will cover data processing, vector stores, RAG architectures, optimization technique. We also have an MCP demo for you and a couple of questions. So I'm really excited to dive right in, and I'm gonna pass over to Frank for the more detailed overview of the exam guide.
Yes, thanks so much, Oksana. And yeah, so let's just share the screen in terms of what's relevant for this certified generative AI developer professional. So just to let you know, it was launched mid-November last year, and certainly one of the most challenging exams. So at least I can say that I passed this one like 4 weeks ago. And it's a tough one. And being a beta, being still in the beta stage, so that means that we have some additional components to cover here. But first of all, just looking at what is relevant. So beta registration is open, and the first 5,000 people will get this additional early adopter badge that you can see here. And yeah, so what's most relevant is always the exam guide, and I have already opened it up. And just let me show some highlighted pieces in here. So first of all, always relevant to know is the exam ID, that is AIP-CO1. So AI professional and version number is 1.
That's right. And that's
And
important because you might be searching through Pearson VUE or wherever you like to take your certifications, and you want to make sure that you schedule the right certification. That is a mistake that I've made before. So the
really?
exam, yes, I may have showed up for a networking certification when I studied for a security certification. It did not go well,
Fun.
but we figured it out. We figured it out.
Yeah, and then what you do is, if you look at the number of slides, it's quite impressive. It's 28 slides or 28 pages, so it's quite an extensive guide. And target candidate description, maybe just briefly looking here. So you should have 2 or more years of experience building production-grade applications on AWS, and 1 year of hands-on experience implementing GenAI solutions. So certainly that's everyone's prerequisite. That might be different for everyone, so it's not necessarily needed, this amount of knowledge or hands-on, but at least quite beneficial. And what's also always quite helpful is to understand what is out of scope for the exam. Job tasks which are out of scope, that is model development and training. So here we are clearly in GenAI, which means that we don't do traditional AI, like for instance, classification, regression, that kind of things. So in turn, these elements, which usually contribute to the usual project pipeline in machine learning, are excluded, as well as advanced machine learning techniques, like, for instance, outlier detection, things like that, is also not covered. Data engineering and feature engineering is as well excluded. All of these, by the way, they will certainly show up in the machine learning engineer associate level, so that's for sure. And then exam content, question types. Why did I highlight only 2 out of 4? So what we have highlighted is multiple choice and multiple response. The ordering and matching question types will not show up in the beta. So in turn, you can just skip them for now. And please correct me, Trevor and Oksana, as far as I know, the beta is done end of March, but maybe we will double check and tell you next episode. Right, so this is something that you should remember. Plus, also in the beta, if you fail the beta, you can only retry after the beta is done. So you can't retry after 2 weeks. Okay, just as a side note. Again, something quite interesting, if you pass the beta, this is something that has been posted by one of our colleagues, Ivan Kopas. If you pass the beta, by the way, the beta is 50% discount. If you have another 50% discount lying around, this will also add on. So you might get this certification for only $75, and it will extend all of what you see here. So like, it will extend your AI practitioner if you have it. If you don't, then it's not possible. It will extend your cloud practitioner, your GenAI develop, your machine learning engineer, and your data engineer. So quite an interesting amount of elements that you can cover in one single exam here. And yeah, the question number is 85 in this beta, again, quite relevant. And we have 5 domains in here to cover. domain number 1, that's what we will focus on today. And that is foundation model integration, data management, and compliance. That will contribute 31% of scored content. So this is going to be the largest part of what you will later be scored against.
Yeah, I'll +1 that just in terms of like the importance of as you're running through this exam guide, actually, looking at the weights to kind of determine where do you need to spend the most time and where do you need to be the most confident. And by the way, for those folks who haven't actually taken an AWS certification exam before, hang tight because we're actually going to show you a few examples today of what an exam question would look like. So that way you can get a sense of what you're walking into if you decide to pursue what according to Frank is not an easy certification, but sounds like so far a pretty rewarding one if you want to learn about generative AI.
Yeah. And if you want to hear my personal opinion in terms of should I have done at least one certification prior to this, I have one hint for you. If it's only one single, I would recommend the Solution Architect Associate, because that will give you a nice foundation in terms of what is possible with Lambda, with S3, with event notifications, and so on, because that might show up here in an amount of questions as well. Yeah, and then let's go further. We have content domain number 1, and we have this subdivided not only into tasks, as you can see, but also into specific skills. And first one, just to give you maybe first the headline again. So foundation model integration, data management, and compliance. That's what we will focus on here. And then if you look a little bit closer, how can we subdivide this? First of all, in analyzing the requirements and designing a GenAI solution. And one component here is to create a comprehensive architectural design, which will align with specific business needs, for example, using the appropriate foundation model, choosing the appropriate integration pattern and deployment strategies. And later on, I will also show you some sketches I've created in Draw.io. But this is content domain number 1. So how do things work together? What is the requirements? How to match them against specific foundation model types? I have also, this is something that I do on a regular basis, maybe also some hint for you. I'm always highlighting components which I think are relevant in the future for learning. And for example, app config, to be honest with you, it showed up in a number of questions in my exam in January. And also a circuit breaker pattern. What was that again? That is something which is completely outside of AWS. It was pretty much advertised by Netflix, actually, but good to remember what that is. And yeah, task number 1.3, implement data validation and processing pipelines for FN consumption. So what can you do in order to ingest data? How can you prepare it in order to be sent over to a foundation model as a prompt, for example? And then format input data in order to perform FM inferencing. And this might be including JSON formatting, for example. And in quite few cases, you will see that SageMaker AI shows up. SageMaker AI will only play a minor role in this exam, as you may be able to guess, because it's not so much focused on GenAI. And if you ask me, only 2 SageMaker AI features will significantly show up, if at all. That is SageMaker AI endpoints, which finally run a deployed model. And second, it's going to be SageMaker AI Jumpstart or SageMaker Jumpstart as a side note. Okay, so maybe that gives you a first idea about the first domain.
I think so. I think it gives us a nice view into kind of generally what to expect on the exam. Just for the sake of time, maybe if you want to kind of wrap up this piece, I'd like to show off a nice example question for those folks that have tuned in live today. But anything else we want to make sure we cover before we move on from this one, Frank?
I guess a quick reminder is that we have the list of services in scope and out of scope at the end of this guide, which is great to know because you don't have to spend lots of time on the services that will not be discussed or will not show up at the exam. And I've seen a comprehensive list of SageMaker features at the end of this guide. So it's great to know that not all of them will show up on the exam, but you still have to have a really deep knowledge of each of those tools and features of SageMaker AI.
Incredible. Yeah. I mean, all things in the realm of generative AI. And by the way, I would say if you're doing this on AWS, just in my experience in the field, very important to have an understanding of all of the options available, because there is not often a one size fits all tool for the job when it comes to generative AI. And so knowing the various trade-offs and when to use what is, by the way, oftentimes that happens to be how the exam questions are structured. Here's a problem. Would you use service A or service B, right? And so those nuances I always like to tell folks as a best practice, knowing what the services do is very important, but also knowing the difference between similar services, hyper important in an exam context.
True. If I may comment on one of the questions in the chat. So Needy is asking, when it comes to the exam scope, do we need to extend to include LangChain framework and MLflow and other FM models, including Hugging Face, only as based on my knowledge or based on my experience, only in the sense of you need to know what it is. Okay, so why would Hugging Face be mentioned? Because Hugging Face enables you to fetch open source models and launch them on SageMaker Jumpstart. And same is true for the others. There is definitely no deep dive on these.
And Frank mentioned that this exam has a feel of an architecting exam. So don't let the word developer scare you. You don't have to code. You most likely will not have to look at long snippets of code. It's just more about understanding how to configure RAG architectures, which service would work best for a specific scenario. And it's not just a single service, it's a combination of how you would work on this massive GenAI system.
Absolutely love it. And we have got a roaring chat today, folks. If you all have more questions, by the way, this is a big reason why we do these live, is because we love being able to answer everyone's questions live. So keep throwing them into the chat, and we will make sure to address every question that we can along the way. Speaking of questions, I've got a surprise for everyone. Would you have guessed you got an exam question today? In fact, folks, I'm sharing up on the screen a QR code that you can scan on mobile. I think mobile is maybe the easiest way, but you can also use trivia.skillbuilder.aws to navigate to this. But if you all would like to go ahead and walk through your first exam style question, go ahead and scan that link. Once I see this participant number go up, that means a few of you have logged in and you're queued up and ready to answer questions. We will kick it off and introduce you to your first exam question of the series, a very important one. So think hard. Think hard. Awesome. While we wait for folks to pop in, I think just to give folks a little taste tester of what we've got after this is, I think we're going to dig a little bit more into some requirements, and then later in the episode, I'm looking at later in the agenda, we're going to actually dig into vector databases and MCP. So make sure that you hang around. Those are exciting topics that you're going to want to hear about if you haven't already. By the way, I don't know who this is, Oksana, but you've got a lot of fans. You're the best. People always love Oksana when I'm on streams with
Thank you.
Oksana, a crowd pleaser. All right, folks, we've got 20 in the queue. I can't wait around forever, so we're going to kick this off. As soon as I press start, you all are going to have 90 seconds to process the question and give us an answer. So here we go in 3, 2, 1. We are going to start, okay? The question today is, a company wants to create an application to analyze fashion trends. They'd like to analyze videos and photos from fashion shows to understand style elements. Okay. They must store the extracted information and provide a dashboard that summarizes fashion trends. Which solution has the least operational overhead? I'm not going to read through each of the answers here. I'm just going to let you all read them and decide if you think the answer is giraffe, duck, monkey, or octopus. So we will hold for the next 90 seconds and let you get those answers in. While folks are answering the questions, by the way, the reason I set this to 90 seconds is because that's kind of roughly the pace that you're going to want to keep up when you're taking an exam. Like I haven't done the math on this exam, but usually like 90 seconds to 2 full minutes is kind of the time I try to budget myself for a question, just to make sure you don't get behind, because it's easy to do whenever the questions are this detailed.
And definitely safe to say this is very difficult on timing this exam. So you will really easily run out of time, even though that non-native speakers can get an additional 30 minutes, but still it's difficult.
We've got 27 answers in. If you haven't submitted your
Cool.
answer yet, you've only got a few more seconds, and we will give you the big reveal. Boom. All right, there we go. It looks like somebody led the witness with live blue. Okay, I'm gonna say it was the chat. It's not your fault if you answered light blue or I guess monkey. Now that they're all gray, it's okay. You stick around. We're gonna dig into these questions and kind of reason through the reasoning why. But Frank,
Yeah.
would you be cool kind of talking through the solution here and kind of why it is ducky and not monkey for those folks
Okay,
that chose monkey?
I'll do that. So first of all, the key question here is the one. So to pick the one with the least operational overhead. And to be honest,
Boom.
this is a pretty nice hint, because everything that points you to complicated things like setting up a Lambda function, putting together some code, chaining together a ton of things, that's all out of the game. It's not least operational. And if you look at the Ducky solution, so step functions in order to chain together the different components is just the most lightweight and easy to manage kind of approach. And you use Amazon Bedrock multimodal FMs. Why is that helpful? Because that keeps you away from combining models, like one image related model, like Stable Diffusion, and then another one, and so on. And this is like the most compact and simplest to operate solution. And you will notice all of the others are more complicated.
That makes perfect sense, right? And this is something that test exam takers need to be thinking about, right? It's like sometimes there are actually more than one technically feasible solution, but your challenge as an exam taker is to identify the most correct solution. And Frank called it out perfectly. Oftentimes when you're reading the exam question, you want to be looking for these keywords, and this is a classic AWS certification format where the last sentence is really one of the most clarifying in terms of the requirements. And in fact, that leads me to a question that we got from Mary in the audience. Any tips for folks that may be challenged by the reading tempo? Which, by the way, if you haven't taken the SA professional exam, I can attest I was challenged by the reading tempo required for that exam. I've got a very average reading level, and so the best tips I could give there is again, I think, looking for keywords and sometimes starting with the end of the question does help me, because what I'll find is sometimes if I just start from the beginning, I might find myself reading the question through twice. But if I'm able to pick up on keywords like this, sometimes that context helps as you're reading through the overall question. And then I think the other thing that's always helpful is, of course, just like there's what we would call like distractor answers to certain questions. And so more often than not, it's kind of sometimes you may not even have to read the full question or the full answer to determine, oh, that's probably not a good fit right now. Like maybe a good example is the beginning of this question. I don't think this really addresses the root of it, and so that's a good answer. You might go ahead and weed out of the options there early on. But hey, time management is a big part of test taking.
Yeah.
Another great way to make sure that you're keeping up with the pace is actually just to practice. And if I could give you a shameless plug, we actually happen to have practice exams or practice questions available for many of our certifications on AWS Skill Builder. And there's a public exam question, or I think is there 10 public questions that you can download
20.
today? 20. Thank
Yeah.
you. So definitely leverage that resource, and I think practice exams are a great way to kind of get yourself in the mode of focusing for a long period of time and keeping the level of intensity that you need.
Yeah. And usually it's also helpful to, keep an eye on the time. You can flag questions and come back to them during your final review at the exam. And it's good to leave 5 minutes at the end, at least for the closing out section, when you have to take a survey and make sure, if you're at the test center especially, you have to click through a bunch of different steps just to complete your exam. And just like Trevor said, it's really a good technique to scan for keywords and then quickly browse, what am I being asked? Is it about the most operationally efficient option, or just the option that meets the requirements? And which options are wrong completely? So you can eliminate those based on the keywords and distractors.
Absolutely, and great. We got great questions from the audience. And rather than slow down and answer them, I would actually say a lot of these questions, like for example, what are the best AI tools for creating AI agents for a business on AWS? If you decide to go on this journey of preparing for the certification, you will learn the answers. There is no one size fits all answer to what is the best thing to use to build an agent, but I think a big thing that you would take out of this exam is leaving with the understanding of the nuances for why you might choose something like Strands or something like a different agentic framework. I don't know if Strands is in scope of the exam, by the way. I'm just using that as an example.
It is,
Oh,
and
great. Good to know.
Actually, it's only a GenAI framework. Again, that's enough to know in terms of it simplifies the way that you can create an agent and create memory and so on. And someone else also asked a good question: is Kiro included in the exam? So everything that was GA later than 6 months ago is not included, because that would be a little bit unfair. So Kiro is, as of now, is not included in the exam. Is the exam is online? So yes, you can do a proctored exam at home, or you can go to a test center and go sit the exam there.
Awesome. I think next week we're going to dig into maybe a little bit more of the requirements, and then we'll jump into data processing and vector databases. But before we do that, on that note, I like taking my certifications in my pajamas personally. I don't like going to the testing center. But what about you all? I hear different schools of thought on this one. Some people really like the in-person testing experience.
I have never taken a test at home. I always go to the test center. It's only a mile away, which is very convenient. But also, if you're taking the test at home, I believe you cannot leave the room. So if you need a little bit of a break, or just have a sip of water, you cannot leave the room. And it always gives me a peace of mind that if I'm at the test center, I don't have to worry about all these external things.
That is a great point. I've been on a few exams where I needed to just race through the last few questions because I had to step out of the room. So I didn't realize that you could pop out of the room when you go in person. That is a good advantage and probably important for a lot of folks. So very good. What do you think? I think I'm looking now, rather than go back into the exam guide and some of the requirements analysis, do you think it makes sense to just jump straight into data processing and vector databases, you all?
Yeah, let's do that.
Is that cool with you, Frank?
Yeah, cool.
Let's do it.
Let's do it. All right. We're going to jump right in, folks. So we started with the example questions, some exam overview. Now we're going to dig into some of the concepts that you need to to learn and know going into the exam. So Frank, when you're ready, I'll pop
And-
the screen up there.
And also, let's not forget about some of the questions really make sense to show on screen and to discuss them as well.
Absolutely, yes. We will keep an eye on those throughout. If you see any that you want to address, for sure, just call it out.
Okay.
Got a lot of other folks that prefer the test center, and okay, cool. I didn't know you get scratch paper on it. Did we have? Oh, I I'm realizing now. I'm so sorry. Data processing, that's in the exam guide, right? So I guess let's pop back into the exam guide for a minute while I think I actually need to pop into some vector database stuff here in a moment. But I'll let you maybe wrap up the exam guide real quick before we dive into vector databases.
Let me just check. Yeah, so this is back to domain 1 again. And then from here, so task 1.4, design and implement vector store solutions. So the idea is just to get the whole concept right. So this is about retrieval augmented generation. So that might be something that you need to be sure about first, and have captured one, quite simple, but this will do the job. The idea is you need to have a really thorough understanding about what is retrieval augmented generation, why do you need it, or when do you use it and when you don't use it. And when it comes to understanding how does the augmentation work in such a use case, this is usually supported by a vector data store. There is also different concepts, like for instance, GraphRec. They are not part of what is tested. So in turn, you don't need to learn about GraphRec. And the idea is the following. So first of all, what is RAG about? You send a user query, but this query is not sent over to the LLM right away, right? So this is not done like so, but instead what you do is you would like to augment the query, augment it by content that has been previously loaded from your documents. It has been loaded into the vector database. And the benefit of a vector database is that you can do a very fast similarity search. So you can search for similar entries, similar to what you have put into your prompt or into your query. And so in turn, what the vector database will return is chunks, so pieces of text which come closest to what you have been asking for. And then the large language model gets your prompt plus the search results. So it gets your question and the answer as well. And the only thing that the LLM is doing is assemble a reasonable response from this. And also this leads us to the insight that for this, the LLM doesn't have to be so super powerful.
100%. I think one of the turns of phrase that stuck with me to kind of understand when vector databases are so critical is the phrase that like LLMs are really great reasoning machines, but they're very bad databases, right? Like LLMs fundamentally, while they can retain a lot of data, first of all, like you may have custom data to your organization that you need to integrate with an LLM. And so a vector database or some sort of context engineering technique is ideal for that. Another example would be like, maybe if you went to your favorite LLM, and I'm not talking about an LLM wrapper, I'm talking about just the raw LLM, and you ask a question like, who's going to play in the Super Bowl next week? You might get a response that says, hey, I actually don't know anything after the year 2023 because that's when my training data ends, right? And so something like this allows us to ensure that we can get responses that are up to date and relevant. And so the reason I digress on this a little bit is to reinforce that, like, you need for an exam like this, you need to understand the how of like kind of how a RAG pipeline or a knowledge base works, but you also need to understand the problem that it solves, because the way that the questions are asked will kind of reveal a problem space that you are going to need to identify a solution for. And so that concept of the fact that LLMs don't store data very well, but databases are quite good at it. And so strapping a vector database onto your favorite LLM is a great way to inject it with more recent real world data.
And the questions would go a little bit deeper. You would have to understand different optimization strategies. You need to know how the content is being chunked. Just like Frank mentioned, that it's you have a document and you're not just storing the whole like 1 page or 100,000 page or however, like whatever is your size. You're not storing it in a vector space just as a big chunk. You have to chunk it into smaller pieces, and there are different strategies that come with that. I can give a simple scenario. For example, imagine you're building a RAG system for a manufacturing company, and the idea is that the person should ask your RAG or an agent would ask a question like, this equipment is broken, how do I fix it? And there are different ways how you would chunk the content for that specific scenario in that RAG system. You can use fixed size chunking that breaks your content in about 300 token chunks, but that's not the best scenario or the best option for our scenario, because you would miss important steps. Imagine there is step 3 in the repair manual, and it just gets broken into those 300 token chunks. There is also semantic chunking, where that works best for knowledge base articles, different papers that have some close semantic meaning, and you can bring that meaning, you can retrieve it. For the repair manuals, you would probably look into hierarchical chunking, the one that stores chunks as parent-child pairs. So the parent pair would be a broader system, and the child would be fixing a pump or fixing like a small component. So when a repair person would ask the system, how do I repair a pump? You would get a child chunk, and it will also be connected to the pair chunk that could be brought up, so you don't miss any warnings, you don't miss important steps, anything that comes along, in the repair process. And that's one of the steps of chunking the content. You can then also apply metadata, which narrows down your filtering. So you can if you ask a question and you get 100 chunks, metadata filtering would narrow down the search to about 30 chunks. And then on top of that, you can add a re-ranker model that will sort and shuffle and filter through that content, and bring out of 30 chunks, will bring up 5 the most relevant ones to your specific search. So you have to understand really these like deeper techniques for optimization, for content retrieval, and different techniques for different use cases. So I brought up the repair one, but you might be asked about something that applies to semantic component.
Absolutely. Yeah. Great call out there that like, and by the way, this is what I love about this exam is that like the subject matter of the exam is so in line with the problems and challenges that builders in the field and customers that are building face. Like what you're talking about here is like, yeah, of course, like RAG. I mean, if you haven't set up RAG before, by the way, I would suggest maybe log into Amazon Bedrock, and you can set up a very simple vector database with a feature called knowledge bases, right? So that's like a managed RAG deployment. And it's so easy these days to have a few documents, get them into a knowledge base, sync the data, and then run some really fast iterations of testing and evaluations. But once you need to get that thing into prod, that's where there's a lot of, guess what? Thankfully, they still need people like us. There's engineering work that needs to be done, right? There's engineering of those chunking strategies and kind of how you can customize those settings and load data correctly such that it supports your use case. Hey, we got some great questions here in the chat, so I just gotta pull them up while they're coming in.
Cool.
Nidhi asked, hey, this whole skill builder thing, would that help me get hands-on? Do you work for Amazon? Is this a plant question? Is this somebody from AWS training and certification? Yes, in fact, skill builder does include access to hands-on labs. And it's a nice way to do hands-on, especially if you are nervous about accruing cost on an AWS bill, right? Because if you use your AWS account, you can try to use free tier, but you have to put a credit card in. And so if you exceed free tier, you could be billed. Skill builder is like a nice little one of the perks of Skill Builder is that you can actually access hands-on labs in these hosted AWS environments. A lot of interesting. I'd be curious to get both of your all's thoughts, and a lot of interesting questions. And it can be confusing to folks' point of like choosing the right vector database for the job. These are conversations I have with customers all the time, and I'll tell you all my opinion, and if you all have opinions, maybe you can share it. I tend to suggest customers use the vector database that is most aligned with the databases they're already using today, just because they might already know how to operate them. But there are legitimate times when you might want to use a vector database, like, for example, S3 as a vector database, super cost effective. If you need cheap vector search, like S3 is like a really great way to go. OpenSearch, super performant. We just launched OpenSearch with GPUs at reInvent. I haven't tested it out, but I bet it is like blazing fast. Somebody asked, is Postgres convenient to use? Yeah, it's convenient to use Postgres as a vector database, especially if you already use Postgres, which many of our enterprise customers do. And so what I don't know is if it goes down to that level of depth in the exam where you pick a vector database, or if it's more like you need to just select RAG as a solution to a problem. But I would certainly want to be aware of whether or not a database is capable of being a RAG or a knowledge base endpoint if I were going into an exam like this. Anything we missed there, Frank or Oksana, that you feel like we need to touch on in the world of RAG and vector database?
I would like to add maybe one thing. If you could just put me on screen share again, my screen. And that is really a helpful tool. I'm not sure if it's that much known everywhere. It's called PartyRock. And just wanted to let you know that this is also super helpful in order to help you to get prepared for an exam. So if you need to sign up for free, this is easily feasible with either using your Google, Apple, or Amazon account. Then just continue like so. And you can create your own apps. You can use other people's apps. And I have already created one, which I will quickly show to you. It's the, where is it again? Prompt interpreter. So this is, if you look behind the scenes, this is pretty much a native Claude 4.5 Sonnet, which is one of the most comprehensive tools from Anthropic. And what you can do here is just come up with a question in terms of generic AWS terminology. It will answer it as long as it's not younger than like 1 year ago. So it will cover like 90% of everything that is requested in the exam and is completely free of charge. So try it out. And yeah, you can just let me check if I can share this content here. Yeah, so you can definitely try it out. And the app that you created can be shared. It's all free of charge. And it's possible to really get some valuable insights also in terms of how retrieval augmented generation works, and is Cassandra a reasonable vector store, and so on.
Love it. Yeah, I'm a big PartyRock fan, especially for like building something simple and reusable that relies on like underlying LLM knowledge. It's like a really great tool. We got Mike P. Funk, of course, has built his own AWS training and certification tutor. That's certainly a great way to go.
Perfect.
With knowledge with PartyRock. So definitely check out PartyRock if you haven't yet in the chat, especially if you're new and you maybe don't want to jump right into coding your own solution. This is a great way to get started with the concepts. You know, by the way, folks, if you're just tuning in, you're tuning into a stream that's going to happen every week for the next 4 weeks throughout the month of February, where we're going to educate you and help you prepare for one of the newest certifications from AWS. It is the AWS Certified Generative AI Developer Certification. Not an easy certification, but a rewarding certification. And for those who have been hanging around for the last 45 minutes, thanks for hanging around. Thanks for all the amazing questions. Keep the questions coming because we still have time to answer them. But for the folks in the chat, I have a question for you. With the limited time we have left, does anybody have the appetite for one more practice question? Because I've got the appetite for one more practice question, but I want to make sure that the chat is ready to test their knowledge one more time. This is the redemption question, all right? Because the last one we could have done a little bit better. So let's see what people think. All right, we got Joe the dog says, "Let's do it." Is Party Rock free? As far as I know, Party Rock.
Yes.
I think it's free.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yes,
Cool.
absolutely.
There you go. Free inference is hard to come by, so use it while you can, folks. Amazing. It looks like folks would very much like to continue on their exam question journey here. So, folks, if you still have the window open and you were here previously, I'm about to start the next question. Okay. But if you weren't here before, the best way to access this question is you can scan this QR code on the screen, okay? Or you can go to trivia.skillbuilder.aws and enter this code, okay? So I'm going to go ahead and proceed to the next question here, but I just wanted to let you all know if you're trying to play catch up, you just scan that QR code or type in this URL right here with this code. All right. So the next question begins. Oh, and isn't that timely? It appears to be about knowledge bases. A company's AI assistant uses Amazon Bedrock knowledge bases with S3 documents as the data source for RAG. That's what we were just talking about. So you all might just be prepared for this one. They need new documents included and deleted and excluded from responses ASAP. A developer must create a scalable solution. What option is the best answer? You all take your time, read through this question. You got about 60 seconds left, and let us know what you think. Is it giraffe, ducky, monkey, or octopus? You be the judges.
And when you're looking at this question, pay attention to the keywords. During the exam, you definitely will not see the abbreviations like SAP as soon as possible because custom creative question. But that's one of the things that's highly important for this question. If something is saying as soon as possible or near real time, that's the way I see it. It's not batch. It's not happening on schedule. It's not happening later. It's almost right now, as soon as possible.
Yeah, good
and then
point.
this has to be event driven, meaning that we need to respond to changes as soon as they happen. And the architecture has to be scalable and resilient, which are two very important points.
We got our redemption.
That was fast.
We got our redemption. We've got 14 correct answers. So most of you got this one right. Okay, so I'm glad we did at least one more question here because if I get a question wrong, I want to redeem myself. So amazing job on this one, folks. Would Frank or Oksana, would either one of you want to do the honors of explaining why it is in this case the blue monkey as the right answer?
Oksana?
Okay, so when you look at there are two of the options are talking about Amazon Event Bridge Scheduler, but the question has a keyword as soon as possible, so it's in near real time. So we're not scheduling anything. We're not using batch synchronization, which already eliminates options A or giraffe and the last one, which narrows down our search or our thinking process to two options: configuring S3 event notifications, which is correct, and for event-driven, scalable, and resilient solution, it's great to add SQS queue, so you're not going to lose anything that is part of that queue.
Yeah, if I may add on top of that.
Mhm.
So this one, so to decide between the duck and the gorilla is really tough, because the only difference is the SQS in the middle. And you might argue, hey, come on, both of these work, but the SQS part is more stable and more flexible, because there you can also say, hey, I'm fetching a batch of 10 requests from the queue to speed up things. And that's why at the end, the third option is the winner.
Yeah.
That makes a lot of that is an important nuance and a great example about how just a word or two can make the difference between a correct or an incorrect answer on one of these AWS exams. So you gotta pace yourself, but you don't want to rush, right? I don't know about you all. There's been a lot of times whenever I've clicked fast through a question and then maybe I had some extra time at the end to go back, and then I'm like, wait, I completely missed that one. And it's almost always because I'm like getting nervous and moving too fast and not giving myself, the space to kind of like move at, it's not a speed test. It is a knowledge test, right? So the point I want to make here is you don't need to be you need to pace yourself. You don't have to race against the clock and get overwhelmed during the exam. That's certainly not a good approach for a lot of folks.
That actually applies to us as well in our live stream. We had the MCP demo, but I feel like we don't have enough time to show it. So maybe we will keep it for next time and share some really cool resources like Kiro and how you can install MCP with through CLI, Kiro CLI, and you can also get you can use it as your exam prep resource because you can connect to the AWS Knowledge MCP and it will give you up-to-date answers, so you don't have to search the docs and try to, figure out how to build these architectures. The Kiro CLI MCP can help you with those topics, those components.
That's a great call out, folks. Just another reminder, we're going to be doing this every week for the next 4 weeks. So mark your calendars, all right? Because next week we're going to come right back at it. I think we're going to be running through the some other domains and knowledge that you need for this exam. And folks, we do have a few more minutes. So if folks, I see a few questions coming in the chat. Maybe we'll grab a few questions from our lovely audience before we send them along their evening. And I see one from Jeff that's just calling out to me. He said in the last question, he's wondering, doesn't adding SQS increase the latency? And I'll take this one. You could argue like marginally, like there's some additional latency that's incurred, but I think what Frank was mentioning is when you use a queue-based system, you now have the ability to like pull that system and process many of those messages in the queue at once, right? So what you shouldn't, it's a common mistake to think because I'm adding an extra step, I'm going to increase latency. But the way you should think about it is like end-to-end latency of your entire workflow. And a queuing system can really improve that by decoupling some of the underlying components and allowing them all to operate independently, and in this case, scale up and down independently with how many messages are in the queue.
Yeah.
Folks are asking, is there a link for upcoming events? If they wanted to come visit us again, how would they do it? Well, I would say, Theron, I see you're tuning in from LinkedIn, so come back to LinkedIn the same time, same place next week. You can also follow any of us on LinkedIn, and you'll see us continue to share links to the shows, and that's certainly one way to stay connected to the AWS live streaming.
We're meeting every Wednesday in February, 5 p.m. Eastern time. And it's been really exciting. We are learning with you. We also have some homework for you. We will be sharing, I would like to ask our amazing chat moderators to share the link to the advanced learning plan. It's a role-based training on Skill Builder. This training includes a variety of courses and labs specifically designed for the advanced GenAI upskilling. And if you're following the 4-step plan that we were showing today on the exam page, that plan will take you to the exam prep course. The exam prep course for this certification is designed to help you assess your knowledge. It's like the final step to understand, am I ready or not? The exam prep course is not designed to teach you every single item on the exam. For teaching part, we have the role-based training. So I just wanted to separate these two different types of content and courses that we have on Skill Builder.
Very helpful. Yes, we're gonna share those homework links here in the chat. And before we wrap up and let Frank go to bed, because I heard it's late his time. I just realized that the new trivia thing we have, we're able to identify a winner. So
Cool.
Derek and Louise David and T, whoever you are, congratulations. That means that you were some of the speediest to respond, and you probably some of the few who got both questions correct. So great work this week. Hope to see a lot of the same names back on next week's stream in the same time and the same place. I don't have anything else. Frank, Oksana, do you all have any last comments or words of wisdom for the crew before we send them along for the rest of their week to go learn about generative AI and do their homework, of course?
Go to Skill Builder and search for AIPCO1 to get your resources ready.
There you go. AIPCO1. Oksana.
Cover domain 1. Just keep your studying going, and next time we'll be discussing domain 2, and we will also bring up the MCP demo that we didn't have time, unfortunately, to cover today, but we will have a lot of exciting interactive activities next time for you. Thank you so much for joining, and we appreciate that you want to learn with us.
All right, thanks everybody. We'll see you next week.
Bye.